I experienced this event at the end of last year. Until then, neither cold nor loneliness had ever really bothered me, not until that night. Just outside the town, on the side of a single-lane road, I have a small house where I live alone. The snowstorm had been all over the news for days. "Don't leave your homes this weekend," they said. I made myself a bowl of instant soup and turned on the TV. The local news mentioned an overturned truck, closed roads, and neighborhoods that couldn't be reached anymore. Every now and then, the lights would fade for a second, then come back. "All right," I muttered to myself. The grid strained as usual. Then suddenly, everything went dark. The TV went silent. The hum of the refrigerator stopped, and the house was filled with nothing but the storm. Wind and snow hammering the tin roof. I stood there in the dark for a few seconds. With nothing to see, I just listened to my own breathing. As soon as the heaters shut down, the temperature inside started dropping fast. I have an old generator in the backyard. It's loud and unreliable, but in weather like this, it's all I've got. I waited for a while, telling myself, maybe the power will come back. I couldn't stand the cold. Finally, I put on my coat and grabbed my flashlight. As I reached for the door handle, something inside me whispered, "Don't go out." That inner voice everyone hears in moments like this, but logic spoke louder. "If you wait here, you'll freeze." When I opened the door, the wind practically punched its way in. Snow was falling sideways. The beam of the flashlight vanished into the air, and I couldn't see more than a few meters past the porch. The generator was close, but in the storm, even that distance felt far. I stepped off the porch and onto the narrow path beside the house. The same path I walked comfortably on summer evenings was now buried in snow up to my knees. I muttered to myself, "It's nothing. You'll get to the generator, start it, and come back. That's it." I aimed the flashlight to the right. It was only a few meters from the house to the generator, but in that storm, it felt twice as long. As I lowered the light to look for it, I noticed something on my right. Between the house and the tree line, a dark shape was half buried in the snow. At first, I thought it was just branches blown by the wind. Maybe a fallen trash can. Maybe a blanket forgotten from summer. My eyes burned from the snow, the wind stinging my face. I steadied the flashlight and looked again. It took me a few seconds to understand. That thing was breathing. Beneath the layer of snow, its chest rose and fell. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then I saw another breath vapor fade into the cold air. My palms started sweating around the flashlight, like it was about to slip. I took a step closer. The dark mass slowly sat up. Even that seemed to take effort. A dark coat, hood pulled up. The flashlight didn't reach the face. I could only see knees bending and boots sinking into the snow. Then something in its hand caught the light. A short, sharp glint, metal. I couldn't tell what it was, maybe a knife, maybe a tool. But my mind clung to the worst possibility. The figure started walking toward me without saying a word. No hello, no help, nothing. Just walking. Even the storm couldn't drown out the crunch of snow under those steps. I stepped back. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice carried away by the wind. "Who are you?" No answer. Same pace, same silence, just moving toward me. My heart jumped when my heel hit the porch step. "Are you messing with me? Do you need help?" I yelled. Still nothing. And then, like someone flipped a switch, it started running. I spun around instinctively. I ran for the door. My feet sank into the snow. The wind stole my breath. I practically launched myself onto the porch, grabbed the door handle, and threw myself inside. I shoved the door shut, pulled the bolt up, and slammed it into place. I collapsed to my knees in front of the door, my heart pounding uncontrollably. Then I heard it. Outside, heavy footsteps crushing the snow on the porch. Slow, but deliberate. They stopped right in front of the door, only a few inches of wood between us. Then the metallic sound of the door knocker moved, slowly up and down. Not knocking, testing. Then he rammed his shoulder into the door. The frame shook, pictures rattled on the wall. He pushed again, harder this time. I couldn't say a word as I pressed my knees against the bottom of the door, trying to brace it. The house felt colder than the storm outside. Just as I braced for the third blow, everything stopped. No knocker, no footsteps. The bolt didn't tremble. It was like the man had vanished. I held my breath and listened. Then, a faint rustling in the snow. One step, another. This time moving away from the door. He stepped off the porch and walked to the right. When he reached the corner of the house, the sound stopped completely, like he'd held his breath and disappeared into the dark. Hands trembling, I grabbed my phone and called the police. As soon as the operator answered, the words spilled out. "There's someone around the house. They just tried to break in. I'm alone." The woman spoke calmly. "Stay away from the doors. Stay inside. I'm sending a patrol." Right then, a clicking sound came from my right, the kitchen window. I crawled toward it. On the fogged-up glass outside, a long handprint slid from top to bottom. You could even see the fingerprints. My entire body froze. The man was still circling the house. Footsteps moved toward the back door. The handle turned twice. Then he moved to the left side. Every entrance, every window. He checked them one by one. Sometimes he'd stop, and for a few seconds, there was nothing. Those moments were the worst. I had no idea where he was. Then, again, everything stopped. No footsteps, no rattling, no scraping on the glass. It was as if the house had emptied. Just then, a siren echoed in the distance. As it got closer, I finally felt a bit of courage return. When the police headlights lit up the windows, I managed to walk to the door. Outside, the wind hit me hard. When the officer pointed his flashlight at the ground, we saw deep footprints in the snow right in front of the door. The man had come back to the door several times, stopped, moved again. When they checked around the house, it was the same everywhere. Tracks under the windows, at the back door, every corner. Like someone had circled the house over and over. But then the officer pointed his light toward the forest, and something strange became clear. The tracks ended abruptly at the edge of the trees. He didn't turn right. He didn't turn left. He didn't run off. It was like he'd lifted straight into the air and vanished. The officer said, "The storm might have covered the tracks," but even he didn't sound convinced. They searched briefly, then told me to go back inside. Lock the doors. Leave the lights on. Stay inside until morning. After the police car disappeared into the storm, I slowly closed the door. The house was silent again, only the wind and the roof groaning in the cold. I didn't go outside the rest of the night, and I've still never seen the face of that dark figure. But that night, I'm certain he saw mine. Until then, no journey had ever truly frightened me. Not until that night, when I turned onto that deserted road in the middle of a snowstorm. I had mapped out a long route to get to my family. Normally, I would fly, but everything was too expensive this time. The road will clear my head, I thought. I figured I'd play some music, sip coffee, and let my mind settle. During the day, that's exactly how it went, until the snow began. At first it was light, thin streaks sliding past my headlights. Then suddenly, everything in front of me vanished. I had no idea what time it was. My eyes were getting heavy. It was becoming harder and harder to stay on the road. I felt like even the slightest distraction could end terribly. Continuing didn't make sense. I needed to stop for a bit. Just as I thought, if only I could find an exit, a dim light appeared on the side of the road. An old neon sign, barely visible through the snow. It wasn't a modern chain station. It looked like a rest stop built decades ago, the kind people no longer visited. But caught between exhaustion and the storm, I had no other choice. I signaled and slowly pulled in. There was only one other vehicle in the lot, a rusty pickup truck parked in the back. I walked to the entrance. A weak yellow light shone inside. The sign said open, though the bulb was barely alive. When I pushed the door, a small bell jingled. The moment I stepped inside, I was hit with the thick smell of old coffee and stale oil. There was also a faint sour scent I couldn't identify. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Then I heard the scrape of a chair from the back, followed by slow, heavy footsteps. A man appeared. He looked to be in his 60s, pale, thin. He wore an old work jacket. His face looked worn, with deep shadows under his eyes. "Traveling at this hour?" he asked in a hoarse voice. I nodded. "Yeah, the weather got bad, so I thought I'd take a break. Just need to warm up a bit." He stared at me for a moment, then pressed his lips together. "No food. Kitchen's closed. This place is usually completely shut at this hour." "I don't need food," I said. "Just a place to sit for a few minutes." He paused. He blinked slowly, took a breath, then shrugged. "Sit if you want, but I'm turning off the front lights." His tone felt less like a rule and more like a warning he couldn't say out loud. A small uneasiness crept in, but the storm and my exhaustion drowned it out. "Small town," I told myself. "Okay," I said. I walked to the seating area. The man pressed a few buttons on the wall. The ceiling lights shut off one by one until the front was nearly swallowed in darkness. He walked toward the back door. It creaked softly as it closed. Right before it shut, he turned and looked at me. That look was far more unsettling than anything he'd said. It felt like he wanted to warn me about something, but couldn't. The door closed. I was alone in the front. Nothing happened for a while. Just the faint hum of the heater as the storm rattled the building. I rubbed my hands together and felt them warm slightly. Then a sound came from the back room. Something heavy was being dragged across the floor, like metal scraping against concrete. I froze. The sound came again, longer this time. Then faint, unmistakable whispers, more than one voice. My chest tightened. There was no way that old man was making those noises alone, so there were others inside, and none of them had shown themselves when I walked in. The whispers grew quicker. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. They were getting ready for something, moving with purpose, together. The shadows stretching beneath the dim lights seemed darker. My heartbeat quickened. Staying here was a mistake. Maybe from the moment I stepped in, I'd walked into something I shouldn't have. I slowly stood up. Careful not to make a sound, I slipped my hand into my pocket and gripped my car keys. Even the cold metal didn't bother me now. My only thought was getting out. Another whisper echoed from the back room, this time clearer. "Now." That was it. I moved toward the door. My hands trembled as I gripped the metal handle. I had to leave, right now. I took a breath and opened the door. Cold wind slapped my face like a blade. Snow swirled inside, stealing my breath. But whatever was behind me felt far more dangerous than the storm. I pulled the door shut and walked quickly toward my car. The snow had built up so much that if I'd stayed any longer, the car might have been buried. As I clutched my keys, I heard the faint sound of a door opening behind me. Someone moved behind the curtain. I didn't look. I just kept walking. I wiped the snow off the car with my arm and dove inside. The lock clicked. The key. Everything happened at once. Just as I inserted the key, a loud noise echoed behind me. The facility's side door had swung open. Two shadows burst out, The old attendant was in front, his face visible for a moment, his eyes narrowed, alert. The person beside him was younger, wearing a thick hood, holding a long object I couldn't identify. They moved toward the car. One grabbed the door handle, the other pushed at the window. I turned the key. The engine sputtered in the cold, then roared to life. Both men pulled the door at the same time. I hit the gas, the wheels spun, then gripped. The car shot forward. I heard someone fall into the snow behind me. As my headlights carved through the storm, only one thought remained. Get away. I didn't look back. Not until I saw two yellow lights in the mirror. The rusty pickup truck behind the station was running. Its headlights cut through the snow and swerved onto the road. I pressed the gas harder. The car slid, but I corrected it. The storm hid me for a moment. The headlights disappeared, then returned. Then the pickup accelerated. It flashed its lights. A long horn blared, sharp as metal. "No," I whispered. "No." A wide curve appeared ahead. I remembered it connected to a larger road. Maybe I'd get a signal. Maybe I'd see another car. I entered the curve. The car skidded slightly. Tracks deepened in the snow. The pickup truck flew into the curve too. Faster, more reckless. For a moment, its rear fishtailed. One headlight hit a wall of snow, flickering. This was my chance. I accelerated. Visibility was only a few meters, but I could feel the road beneath me, the vibration under the tires guiding me. A minute passed, then another. Finally, the lights of the wide road appeared. Far ahead, the headlights of a few cars glowed faintly through the snow. When I reached the main road, I looked back. The truck was still stuck in the curve. Snow trapped its wheels. The storm was swallowing it whole. I didn't stop until I reached the next town. My phone still had no signal. Lines must have been down. When signal finally returned, I called the police. I told them everything. The station, the men, the whispers, the chase. They called me back a few hours later. "The facility is empty," they said. "No traces, no vehicle, not even footprints." Then they added, "It's been closed for years. The maps show that too." There was silence. Then the officer said, "Sometimes a storm wipes everything clean. You're lucky." I never learned the truth. Was that place really abandoned? Who was inside? I don't know. The only thing I do know is this: I'll never take that road again. Lately, the city had started to suffocate me. I don't know why, but every time I came home, everything felt the same, tight and suffocating. This small, old, single-story wooden house I found was exactly what I needed. With the price, the location, and the solitude, the photos hadn't promised much. The day I moved in, the sky was already overcast. I picked up some groceries, coffee, laundry detergent, and a few cleaning supplies from the village store. When the clerk heard the address, he raised his eyebrows. "It's rough out there this time of year," he said. "Why?" "Snow. There might be a storm. The roads get deserted. No lights, nothing. Be careful." I felt a flicker of unease getting back into the car, but I pushed it aside. Snow began falling lightly on the road. At first, it was nothing more than a thin blanket on the ground. I carried the boxes inside and brought Moko's cage. Moko's an old bird. He's been with me for years. He doesn't talk much, and when he does, he repeats whatever he hears in this muffled, sleepy voice. But somehow, he always feels like company. When I opened the door, the smell of old wood and dust hit me. I flipped the switch. A warm, tired yellow light spread across the room. Small but cozy. An old sofa, a tiny TV, a worn rug, peeling paint. Nothing unsettling. Moko watched quietly from his cage. As I set the boxes down, the snow grew heavier outside, and I could feel its weight pressing on the roof. The house was quiet, peacefully quiet. I dimmed the light and sat on the sofa. The snow, the dimness, it all pulled me towards sleep. Not long before 11, Moko broke the silence. Door, door. I turned to look at him. What he said was nothing like his usual playful noises. Moko normally mimicked things more clearly, more cheerfully. This sounded like a warning. What are you saying? I asked, trying to smile. He tilted his head toward the dark doorway that led from the living room to the hallway. His feathers weren't puffed up. He wasn't panicking. He was just staring. That's when I heard it. First, a faint creak of wood, then a short, muffled breath, like a human breath, but choppy, quick, like someone trying to disappear into the dark. I jumped up. Old house, I muttered immediately. Temperature difference, the wood settling, but that creak had sounded very human. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I stepped toward the hallway. The wooden floor groaned under my foot. Normal. What wasn't normal was the temperature. The moment I stepped into that strip of darkness, the air turned cold against my skin. I looked toward the bedroom. The door was open. I could have sworn I closed it. I raised the phone, the light trembling slightly. The faded wallpaper seemed to ripple with shadow. My heartbeat quickened. I approached the bedroom. The darkness behind the door felt like it was listening. I reached out, searching for the switch. My fingers brushed the wall, found the plastic button. Right then, a soft rustling came from inside. That tiny woof sound fabric makes when it drags across the floor. I swallowed hard. My fingers shaking, I pressed the switch. The light came on, and for a second, my lungs stopped working. There was someone in the corner, knees pulled to his chest, head bowed, perfectly still, as if he'd been there for hours. My phone shook in my hand as I backed up. The moment I saw him sitting there, something inside me twisted. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. He just existed in that corner like he belonged to it. I stepped back again. The hallway suddenly felt tighter, the walls closer. I nearly dropped my phone. Breathing fast, I dialed 911. There's someone in my house, I said quickly. I gave my address. The operator's voice was calm but firm. Don't approach the door. If you're somewhere safe, stay there. Officers are on the way. I kept the call open, too scared to even dim the living room light. I didn't want darkness anywhere. Then I heard it. Not from the bedroom, from the start of the hallway. A step, a soft, hollow sound of a barefoot tapping old wood. Another step. Closer, like it had reached the threshold, but wasn't ready to show itself. I slowly raised the phone. The operator was still there. I hear something, I whispered. Okay, stay with me. They're very close. At that moment, I heard a low hum from outside, an engine in the snow. Then, lights. Red and blue reflections flashed across the window. The footsteps stopped instantly. The heavy feeling inside the house seemed to fold into itself, shrinking away. A loud knock shook the door. Police, can you open up? The voice was so real, so normal. It felt like a balloon in my head finally burst. I got up shakily and opened the door. Cold air slapped my face. 2 officers stepped inside. One scanned the house with a flashlight. The other looked directly at me. You said someone was inside? Yes, I said. In the bedroom, sitting in the corner. Then I heard them in the hallway. The officer nodded toward the hallway. We'll check it out. They didn't ask me to follow. I stayed in the living room. Their heavy boots thudded through the hall. Moko rustled in his cage. Minutes passed. I could hear them faintly, opening doors, checking closets, leaning under the bed. No panic, no urgency, just routine. Eventually, they came back. No one's here, the shorter one said. We didn't find any signs of another person. Doors are locked from the inside. A part of me wanted to argue, but no words came out. The officer lowered his voice slightly. Could have been fatigue or shadows. Happens a lot out here at night. Still, call us right away if something else happens. We'll increase patrols tonight. I thanked them. They shut the door. Their steps faded into the snow. The last flashes of their lights vanished from the windows, and the house fell into silence again. Standing in the dim living room, the black mouth of the hallway looked like it was staring back at me. Empty, yes. The police said so, but the tightness inside my chest didn't loosen. I could still see that man sitting there, and those footsteps. I hadn't imagined them. Moko made a tiny sound, thin as a breath. The door? His little body shook in the cage, his eyes fixed on the darkness. As if the man was still there. I didn't sleep that night. I kept all the lights on. I sat on the couch, watching the hallway, waiting for sunrise. And when morning finally came, the garden was buried in snow, but in the narrow path behind the house, there were single footprints trailing across the white.